On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we hear a lot about Zero Trust model, and a bunch of companies are pursuing it, but implementers might have a different point of view here. Curtis is going to take us through it. Digital transformations require lots of planning. Curtis, Brian, and I talk with a great guest, VMware CTO Kit Colbert, about VMware's evolution to SaaS. Plus, we talk about software-defined data centers as a service and how they'll actually help your organization scale your applications and still maintain governance and control. You shouldn't miss it. Twiat on the set. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you from LastPass Studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twiat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 379, recorded February 7th, 2020, VMware Crystal Ball. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by IT Pro TV. Get the most up-to-date IT training with IT Pro TV. Their video courses, virtual labs, and practice tests will give you everything you need to become a successful IT professional. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise for an additional 30% off with a lifetime of your active subscription. Use code Enterprise30 at checkout. And by Worldwide Technology. Worldwide Technology's Advanced Technology Center is like no other testing and research lab, with more than $500 million of equipment, including solutions from key partners like Intel Corporation, and it's virtual, so you can access it 24/7. To learn more and get insights into all that it has to offer, go to wet.com/twit. And by Thanks to Canary. Detect attackers on your network while avoiding irritating false alarms. Get the alerts that matter. For 10% off and 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. Welcome to Twiat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Lou MARESCA, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise, but I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, and starting with our geek in paradise, but he doesn't have coronavirus, Mr. Brian Chee, director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu. Cheebird, it's great to have you back, my friend. How are you feeling over there?
Well, my friend Mr. Hall and I are just hanging in there. It's was not a lot of fun. 2 courses of antibiotics and prednisone, but I am functional again.
Well, always great to have you back. Now, what's been keeping you busy while you've been cooped up at home there?
Well, mostly it's been running a fever and saying I'm just going to die.
Well, we're glad to see you that you're feeling better.
Yeah, we are working on something really interesting, though. We're trying to put together a proposal to put down some coherent optical time domain reflectometers, which will allow us to detect movement in undersea fiber cables, so we can detect tsunamis and earthquakes. And if all goes well, we'll be able to give people in the Pacific a significant amount of warning if a tsunami is heading their way.
Fantastic. Well, Cheeber, you always find ways to fill the void, so that sounds wonderful. Well, folks, we now have one but 2 professionals today, and he's our favorite enterprise and security journalist on the show, Mr. Curtis Franklin. He's the senior editor over there at Dark Reading. Curtis, it's always great to see you, my friend. How's it been going for you?
Oh, not too bad. I have to say that I'm a big fan of incoherently babbling TDRs, so I'll go old school on that. But things are going well. I've been writing some interesting stuff, put up a piece today on things about radio that security professionals should know. And, of course, I'm getting ready for RSA, the ginormous show that comes up in San Francisco at the end of the month. Looking forward to being at in the city by the bay with, 30,000 or so very security-conscious people.
So thanks for being here. Well, guys, speaking of busy, we had a pretty busy enterprise news week. In fact, we hear a lot about zero trust models, and a bunch of companies are actually trying to pursue it. but implementers might have a different point of view about it. Curtis is actually going to take us through that. Plus, we have a great guest, VMware's Cloud Platform CTO Kit Colbert, he's going to take us through software-defined data centers as a service, scaling your applications, and the ability to run applications through an abstraction. But first, this week has had a lot of enterprise news, so let's go ahead and start with this week's blips. Now, we talk a lot about the Internet of Things and how they can actually tend to be vulnerable on a ton of different fronts. In fact, a lot of them are open to attacks and hacks, so you have to take special precaution when they're on your network. Well, there's also another long history that people forget. Embedded devices also have this issue as well, and they have a long history of also being vulnerable. Plus, they are slow to get updates due to the complexity of actually patching them. Now, what devices are part of this category? Well, workplace phones and routers tend to be the largest number of devices that fit that problem. In fact, researchers have found a whole slew of vulnerabilities in Cisco's enterprise products like desk phones, web cameras, and network switches. Now, since Cisco products are so widely used, this actually opens the door to potential impacting millions of devices to this vulnerability. Now, think spy movie and espionage type vulnerabilities here. Now, you're probably wondering what type of them were found. Well, attackers could actually target a vulnerable Cisco network switch to intercept large amounts of unencrypted internal information and move between different parts of the targeted system. Attackers could use related flaws to attack batches of Cisco devices at once, like all desk phones or all webcams, shut them down or turn them into eyes and ears inside the target organization. Now, a common way to protect these devices is by using network segmentation. Now, some of the flaws found by researchers can actually break out of segmentation that IT managers use to silo different parts of the network, like, for instance, guest networks to cause widespread issues. Now, the flaws lie in the implementation of the mechanism known as Cisco Discovery Protocol, or CDP. Now, this actually allows products to broadcast their identities to each other within a private network. Now, CDP is part of the network layer 2, which actually establishes foundational data links between network devices. Now, all devices use some sort of identity broadcasting mechanism, but CDP is Cisco's proprietary version, and it creates easy ways for attackers to actually find Cisco products once they're inside the network. Now, and since all Cisco products use CDP, one vulnerability can be used to automatically and simultaneously target all the devices at once and take over crucial devices like network switches and move laterally from device to device. Now, any layer 2 protocol can have bugs here. We know that. Now, vulnerabilities in CDP simply provide a particularly efficient route to attack ubiquitous Cisco products. Now, some of these bugs are just theoretical attack surfaces, but we actually found that some researchers were able to spot sponsored Russian hackers attacking desk phones, printers, and other office IoT devices to actually infiltrate particular corporate networks. Now, what's the best way to protect your devices? Well, Cisco has updates, of course, but because most of the devices don't auto-update, you have to do it manually. Now, no one ever said keeping your devices up to date was easy, but it's definitely necessary.
Well, in breaking news, 90% of CISOs say they would take less salary if they got a better life. According to a new survey by Vance & Bourne, CISOs are willing to sacrifice an average of $9,642, or about 7.75% of their salaries, for a better work-life balance. The survey of 400 CISOs and 400 C-suite executives discovered that most CISOs, or 88%, are moderately or tremendously stressed, slightly down from 91% in 2019. Now, nearly half, or 48%, of CISOs say that work stress has had a detrimental effect on their mental health, nearly double the 27% who said the same thing last year. 90% of CISOs said that they would take a pay cut if it meant that they could have a better work-life balance. Now, the survey found that there is no single source to CISO stress, but excessive hours are a major factor. Almost all CISO respondents, 95%, said that they work more hours than contracted, with an average of 10 extra hours per week. In addition, only 2% of CISOs say they can switch off when they leave the office, and 83% report they spend at least half of their evenings and weekends thinking about their jobs. The C-suite may recognize the importance of cybersecurity and appreciate the CISO stress, but it doesn't translate into greater CISO support. Just about all of the C-suite surveyed said that the security team could improve on delivering value for the amount of budget they receive, which indicates that despite their additional hours worked, the C-suite thinks that they should still be doing more. Both CISOs and the C-suite, roughly a third of each, say that the CISO is ultimately responsible for responding to a data breach, and nearly 30% of CISOs say the executive team would fire the responsible party in the event of breach. That seems to be correct because a little more than that, or roughly a third of the C-suite respondents said, yeah, that's exactly right. And 20% of the CISOs say they would be fired whether or not their office is responsible for the incident.
Well, here's a change. Google Fiber is killing their TV service to focus on broadband and YouTube TV. So basically the story goes on to say Google Fiber will no longer offer cable-style TV service to new customers, but it will continue selling broadband and urge customers to sign up for streaming video plans such as YouTube TV. Quote, the best TV is already online, unquote, and the only thing customers need to get TV is, quote, fast, fair, reliable internet, unquote, Google Fiber said in an announcement yesterday. So as of today, Google Fiber will no longer offer a linear TV product to new customers. Existing customers who are already subscribed to Google Fiber TV can continue to use the service. New customers can buy Google Fiber broadband on its own or in a bundle with Google's YouTube TV, which is similar to cable TV but is provided entirely over the internet and works with any internet provider. YouTube TV costs about $50 a month and provides live TV from more than 70 channels. Google Fiber is also partnering with Fubo TV, a similar streaming service with a heavier focus on live sports than YouTube TV. They'll both offer live sports. Customers can choose either YouTube TV or Fubo TV when they sign up for the Google Fiber broadband, or they can just buy broadband alone and purchase any online video service separately. Google Fiber also offers a home phone service for $10 per month when added to an internet plan. Anyway, it basically goes on. The bottom line is this is actually a trend that I've been noticing as my partners and I are trying to, set up our wireless internet service provider. The reality is cord cutters, especially the younger cord cutters, are not interested in TV anymore, and they just want plain, reliable, fast internet services.
Bluetooth is just one of those protocols that just seems like it could be hacked, right? Don't you think? Well, according to the recent vulnerability, it is. Now, the vulnerability tracked as CVE 2020-022 affects devices running Android Oreo, which is actually 8.0 and 8.1, and Pi as well, which is 9.0. Now, if you go out to the market and count all the devices using these versions of the OS, you'll actually find out it accounts for almost 2/3 of Android devices in use today. In fact, the flaw is rated critical by Google. The flaw found is actually a wormable security hole where the bug could be exploited to steal personal data or distribute malware. Now, attackers can silently execute arbitrary code with the privileges of the Bluetooth daemon. In fact, there is no user interaction required at all, and all they really need is the Bluetooth MAC address to targeted devices. Now, for some devices, the Bluetooth MAC address can be deduced from the Wi-Fi MAC address. The only saving grace is the attacker would need to be in close proximity to the device and not remote. Plus, the device would need to be in discovery mode. So that does kind of reduce the surface area here. Also, the issue is much less of a problem is that Android 10, where it cannot be exploited and leads only to basically a crash of the Bluetooth daemon. Now, if you go and if you own a Google-branded smartphone such as Pixel, you're in luck because there is a patch. But unfortunately, some of the manufacturers' patching may not be as fast as desired by most people. Now, owners will need to wait for their phone manufacturers or carriers to roll out an update. But in fact, many of these versions of the phones on that OS are no longer supported by the manufacturer. Sounds great. Now, I guess it goes to show you sometimes the best defense is just to turn it off.
Global manufacturing has been hit by new malware. A new malware campaign built to exploit flaws in connected devices is targeting manufacturers around the world and affecting products ranging from smart printers to heavy equipment. This attack campaign uses a self-spreading downloader that runs malicious scripts as part of the Lemon Duck PowerShell malware family. The threat exploits vulnerabilities in Windows 7 embedded devices and specifically targets manufacturing sites where infected devices can possibly malfunction and pose risks to employee safety, supply chain disruption, and data loss. In these attacks and many Internet of Things focused campaigns, adversaries aren't really concerned with the type of device they infect because Lemon Duck was developed as a crypto miner. But in this scenario, the malware has been customized to perform capabilities beyond mining for cryptocurrency on a target machine. Researchers first saw this attack targeting Latin American manufacturers in October of last year. And since then, it has continued to expand with a peak in December and ongoing growth this year in regions including North America, Africa, and the Middle East.
Well, the FCC is doing something interesting. So there's a thing called the C-band spectrum. And the Federal Communications Commission has struck a deal worth billions of dollars with a group of satellite companies to free up that particular spectrum for use of 5G services. This last Thursday, FCC Chairman Ajit Pai released details of the plan, which entails satellite companies giving up the valuable spectrum. The plan calls for the FCC to pay satellite companies $3 to $5 billion in compensation for abandoning their so-called C-band spectrum and moving to another frequency so the airwaves can be auctioned. The FCC also said it would pay another $9.7 billion in accelerated incentive payments to operators in the C-band. The money to pay for this move would come from the auction, which will divvy up the spectrum licenses for 5G use. Satellite companies, including Intelsat and SES, use the C-band spectrum to serve TV broadcasters and cable network operators with video feeds. The FCC is asking these companies to modify their use of the spectrum in order to prevent interference from cell phone use. I should point out that the C-band uplinks to national broadcasters that the FCC is talking about has also seen shrinkage as live shots from local and national news outlets are moving to multi-channel LTE bonding rather than the huge cost of C-band uplinks. So on my mind, this is more about shifting who sells the frequency band rather than the huge paradigm shift that the satellite companies are really claiming.
Now, privacy has become a big topic amongst all consumers and businesses. It leaves people feeling kind of uneasy about using devices, software, and services. Now, some states are trying to make things better by instituting laws that have the potential to protect its citizens. One such law is the California Consumer Privacy Act, which actually took effect on January 1st. It gives people the right to know what large companies know about them and the right to block the sale of that information to others. Now, in fact, it's created a market for privacy expertise in software. Now, in order to uphold the law, it might be difficult for consumer or business to know when it's being violated by the very products they use. That's where the tools come in. In fact, California helped create the modern big data industry in which tech companies vacuum up and profit off personal information. What has now done is helped light up a fire under entrepreneurs to create startups that uphold privacy as well. In fact, nearly 300 companies are now selling privacy services, include Privacy with an SEE at the end, Privali, Privatar, Privion. There's a Data Fleets, Data Grail, Data Gravity, Data Guys, much more all out there. And I'll tell you one thing, they have a pretty good amount of personal and privacy security options here. Personal privacy is still under threat from data breaches, data harvesting elsewhere. It may also finally be living up to its promise as a profitable business. Now, there literally is a new startup every day targeting some facet of privacy. By one count, the number of privacy startups assisting corporate clients has grown more than 5-fold in 3 years. Now, the International Association of Privacy Professionals, a nonprofit, counted 259 such vendors in October, up 44 in 2017. up from 44. And in the booming privacy sector, even has its first unicorn defined as privately upheld startup with a valuation of $1 billion. OneTrust, based in Atlanta, has valued at $1.3 billion by venture capitalists. It sells software to help businesses know what data they have, evaluate their risks, disclose the data to customers upon request. Now, most of these companies offer services that are tied to principles that we've seen across privacy laws and data protection laws. Now, some services are simple, like powering the website buttons that prompt people to accept or decline tracking cookies. Now, more advanced services include data mapping, in which companies actually help the client figure out how information flows throughout their organization. Other startups are focused on selling services directly to consumers and not corporate clients. Now, the app Jumbo launched last year, promising to streamline the numerous privacy settings on sites like Facebook. So there's definitely a market for consumers as well. I guess it's true. If you want to create a new market for business, create a law for it. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we get to the bites, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's IT Pro TV. Now, you're a busy professional, right? I'm a busy professional. It can be difficult to learn new skills or make career changes if you don't have the right information, like right material. Now, IT Pro TV has made learning IT and finishing IT certifications possible. You'll be able to learn quickly and actually at your own time. Now, IT Pro TV really has super interesting content. It offers binge-worthy learning for IT professionals and always keeps their content fresh as the IT world is constantly changing. Now, it's in the core values to have content that's current, relevant, and up to date. They are continually filming out of their 6 high-def studios, providing you with training for what's in the IT field today. You'll get actually the latest exam objectives, new certifications, updated software releases, redesigned interfaces, and more. Another awesome feature is that they have free members actually can watch the daily live stream at no cost. Watch as it's created, just like here on Twyat. Now, IT Pros TV's co-founders Tim Broom and Don Pezic created IT Pro TV because it's the IT training they wanted to have themselves. Now, it's engaging, it's conversational, it's affordable, and it's convenient. There are over 4,000 hours of IT training that they offer. They offer the official video training partner for CompTIA and have 12 CompTIA on-demand courses, including CompTIA A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certifications. I'm constantly needing to learn, and great content like this helps me stay engaged, learn new and sometimes challenging topics fast and efficiently. Get more out of your career by growing your knowledge base and learning something new. Now, see how IT Pro TV can make it easy for you to grow your career. Go to itpro.tv/enterprise and use code enterprise30 to receive 30% off. That's itpro.tv/enterprise and use code enterprise30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. And we thank IT Pro TV for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. Now, we hear a lot about Zero Trust model, and a bunch of companies are really trying to pursue it. They're trying to get on the bandwagon. But a bunch of implementers, the ones who actually have to roll it out, have a much bigger, different point of view of how useful and easy it is to get it out there. Curtis, I want to throw it over to you because you have a pretty interesting story here to talk about Zero Trust.
Yes, what we're finding out is that a lot of companies and organizations are interested in going to a zero trust model for their security, but there are still a lot of security practitioners who have their doubts about the whole affair. Worried about protecting data, the likelihood of breaches, rise of insecure endpoints, and IoT devices, companies are looking for things like the zero trust model to help provide security for their entire infrastructure. On February 4th, survey firm Cybersecurity Insiders published a Zero Trust Progress Report, and it found that 2/3 of the surveyed cybersecurity professionals would like to continuously authenticate users and devices and force them to earn trust through verifications. Now, these are 2 of the foundational components of Zero Trust model. But while the average security professional is confident that he or she can apply zero trust, 1/3 of respondents had very little confidence in that ability, and 6% had no confidence at all. Now, This survey is not alone in reaching these conclusions. Zero Trust is about a decade old and it's poised to go mainstream, but cybersecurity pros remain uncomfortable with its implementation. In other words, they love the concept, they're just hesitant about committing to putting it in the field right now. Zero Trust, as it turns out, is one of those initiatives that's being pushed from the top down, coming from the C-suite, who frankly can say things like zero trust and do so without understanding all of the various bits and pieces in making it happen. Since it's a different model of security, a different approach to security, it's obviously going to take time for all the security professionals and practitioners out there to become familiar with what a working, solid zero trust implementation looks like. Why is zero trust a thing at all? Well, it started and continues to evolve as a response to the fact that the network perimeter has pretty much gone away. Smartphones, mobile computers, coffee shops, all of the various things have become used by employees at a rapid rate. And this is not something that is driven solely by those lazy employees who want to use their own things. This is largely being driven by the companies themselves who want that additional productivity, want the productivity of constantly available employees. But the same components that bring all of those benefits also create the biggest challenges for companies when it comes to providing security. 62% of the companies surveyed say that they have to worry about overprivileged employees accessing applications, as well as whether their corporate partners are accessing the resources assigned to them or something more. And about half of the respondents are worried about vulnerable mobile and rogue devices within their networks. Now, all of this is made even more critical by digital transformation and digitalization, to use a Gartner word, because both of these are taking more and more business processes and turning them into applications. Furthermore, this is not something where most companies can simply take a forklift upgrade approach to putting zero trust into place. They're having to integrate zero trust into existing architectures, into existing applications, into existing infrastructures. It's not that it is inherently more expensive to do zero trust than what people are doing today. In fact, many companies are finding that there are significant capital savings. Why? Well, in many cases, a lot of different technologies can be collapsed down into a single or handful of zero trust components. But the big thing that has to happen here, education. And not just the practitioners, but users as well, because this does in fact bring about more and more authentication that happens at every step. I know the organization that I work on is moving towards zero trust, and I do have to re-authenticate frequently and with a bunch of different applications, but they're making it easy for that to happen. So is there additional friction? Yes. Is it worrying additional friction? No. And that sweet spot is the key for both practitioners and employees to appreciate and use zero trust without spending all of their time looking for some sort of workaround. Now, I'm going to turn to my co-host for a couple of questions. Brian, to you, because I know you've dealt with a lot of security. How difficult do you see this whole notion of deploying zero trust? I mean, is this something that is radically different for most security professionals?
I think it's all going to be, iterative. So like, for instance, at the University of Hawaii, we've gone to using the Duo system. We've actually had them as an interviewee in the past. And the reality is gee, being able to do my multi-factor authentication on my Apple Watch or such has been really cool. In fact, that combined with something like a really good password vault. I happen to use LastPass, which is a Twit sponsor, and all these are starting to add up towards a zero trust model. I won't call it a zero trust yet. We're not even close to that, but at least we're walking towards it. And by easing into this, we've actually gone a long way towards educating our faculty, staff, and students on what multi-factor authentication is. And that's just that one step before we start getting into zero trust. I think as time goes on, as more and more people use this, as our financial institutions start doing a lot more verification of identities, it's going to start becoming part of the culture. So I think zero trust is not here yet. I think we are on the road to it. And I'm just crossing my fingers that our general community actually starts getting educated as quick as possible.
Education is certainly critical. Lou, I want to turn to you because, of course, you deal with the application side of things in the enterprise. From where you sit, is zero trust a model that can work with the kind of applications you see, or are there other models that you think are going to come along and sweep zero trust aside somewhere in the near future?
No, I definitely think it's a model that applications can get behind. I think the idea here is a lot of organizations, they want to start to lock things down and start to put policies around things, and they want to start kind of out of the box, trust nobody kind of thing. And I think that this is definitely going to help for applications as well, because you'll see it with a lot of applications out there today, communication applications, ones that do messaging. They kind of already start with this kind of model where you kind of have to opt in people to be there. You have to authenticate them and authorize them and so on and so forth. And I think that this model is definitely going to be one of those things that we continue to see as new services and software are rolling out. So I definitely think will there be one that comes along that could be better? I mean, as long as you're starting out with the kind of the essence of zero trust, I don't know what model could be better there, but you never know. I mean, obviously, there's things are changing and things are trending.
Well, I think that this is obviously something that companies are going to continue to move toward for some time to come. And if you are not involved in a company that's using it right now, might well be worth you taking your time to learn about it, because, well, zero trust is not a zero probability chance of something coming your way. Well, that's the end of this bite. Lou, going to turn it back to you for, I think, an ad, and I know a great guest coming our way.
Thanks, Curt. That's right. Before we get to our favorite part of the show, we actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the Twilight Ride. We have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Worldwide Technology. Now, if you ever get a chance to visit the Worldwide Technology's Advanced Technology Center, you should definitely go, because it's a really amazing site to see. They began building it almost 10 years ago, and it's grown exponentially. It's really like no other testing and research lab you've ever seen. Now, listen to what the lab actually contains. More than $500 million in equipment from hundreds of OEMs and key partners, ranging from high-tech heavyweights like Intel, Dell EMC, HPE, Cisco, to emerging disruptors like Equinix. Now, when you're developing products, you want to work with an organization you can trust, right? Well, WWT is that trusted partner. They will stay with you over the years. In fact, many of their customers have been with them for over a decade, because they know WWT is where they can go to get the answers they need to be sure and to make sure their business runs right. Their ATC is an incubator for IT innovation and offers hundreds of on-demand and schedulable labs representing the newest advances in multi-cloud architecture, artificial intelligence, IoT solutions built on Intel platforms, like the world's only Intel FPGA Acceleration Lab, Intel Select Solution Labs for technologies like VMware vSAN, and other cutting-edge solutions based on Intel's second-generation Xeon scalable processors and Intel's new tier of Optane data center persistent memory. You've worked on large projects and products before, right? Well, sometimes you want to try out things before building products, even before launching products. Well, ATC can help you learn about products before you launch. WWT's engineers use these environments to quickly spin up proof of concepts and pilots using the ATC lab environment so customers can confidently select the best solution. Now, in many cases, this actually reduces concept time from months to weeks, which actually increases your speed to market. Now, they offer lab as a service, as a dedicated lab within the ATC. Now, here customers can perform programmatic testing using the vast technology ecosystem that WWT already has built. Now, it's virtual, so you can actually take full advantage of the ATC's unique benefits anywhere in the world 24/7. Now, WWT engineers work in these labs every day, beta testing new edge to cloud solutions based on the latest and greatest Intel technologies and building reference architectures and custom integrations to help their customers make decisions and see results faster and with much less investment. If you've been eagerly waiting to get to the market faster, the time is finally here. WWT has launched their new digital platform encompassing the ATC ecosystem. This ecosystem creates a multiplier effect of knowledge, speed, and agility anytime, anywhere around the world for their customers. Now get access to articles, case studies, hands-on labs, and other tools that make the difference in today's fast-paced world. To learn more about WWT, the ATC, and become a member of their growing community, go to wwt.com/twit to create an account and gain access to their on-demand labs today. WWT simplifies the complex. That's wwt.com/twit. WWT, delivering business and technology outcomes around the world. And we thank Worldwide Technology for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring a guest in to actually drop some knowledge on our Quiet Riot. And today we have a really great guest, VMware CTO of the Cloud Enterprise Group, Kit Colbert. Kit, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Kit, our audience loves to hear people's origin stories. Can you maybe take us through a little journey through tech and how you ended up at VMware?
Yeah. Well, I've actually been at VMware for over 16 years now. So it's been a long journey. I started with the company when it was probably about 200 people or so. So very small, always focused on, low-level infrastructure. Started out on the ESX group, worked my way up through different parts. I've done a bunch of different things, helped us start the cloud native focus business unit, and now back to our core sort of vSphere group as CTO.
Fantastic. Well, we're definitely excited to have you here. We have lots of topics to cover. But first, I want to kind of jump in through, maybe take us on a little journey that VMware has had over the last couple of years. It's kind of went through, the security and container innovation to more of a SaaS offering. It's more, it's got things like the Project Pacific around containers, Tanzu portfolio, also that whole $2.7 billion acquisition of Pivotal. Like, what is going on here? What is VMware, and how are they evolving? Where are they going?
Yep. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different activity going on here. So the first part is really around, how do we build out our core virtualization portfolio, right? You've seen us doing that over the past many years, starting with compute virtualization, going to network virtualization, storage virtualization. We put that all together in what we call our software-defined data center. And then what we've been doing since then is really building out the software-defined data center to proliferate it to as many locations as possible. So you can be able to get it not just on premises in your data center, but in the cloud. We can run it on top of AWS. We can now run on top of Azure. We've had partnerships with Google, Oracle. We have many, many different cloud providers that we work with. And so the idea is get this core infrastructure to as many locations as possible, enable customers who have built applications, running applications on top of that infrastructure to then move those apps anywhere they want. And while that's amazing, we also realize that a lot of customers are looking at how do they re-architect applications? How are they evolving these applications? How are they taking advantage of these great new technologies, such as Kubernetes or containers or microservice architecture type things? And so that's where a lot of the more recent announcements you might have seen around our Tanzu portfolio, around the Pivotal acquisition. That's where those all fall into place. So in reality, there's like a ton of different things that we're doing here, and helping customers both with their existing applications as well as with new applications.
Now, a little bit on the new application side. Now, we hear a lot about. I've watched a lot of VMware, videos, and I've been to conferences, and I hear a lot about the whole concept of what we call build, run, and manage. Can you maybe take us through what that strategy is, what VMware is trying to do?
Yeah, sure. So that again falls under what we call our Tanzu portfolio. And so the basic idea there is that we've kind of broken it up into 3 different categories: build, run, manage, as you just mentioned. So on the build side, it's capabilities around how are people building these modern applications. So with our with our Pivotal acquisition, we have technologies like Spring and Spring Boot. So very foundational to how people are doing that. There's a whole set of Pivotal capabilities there around their build service, around their application service. Things like Bitnami, another acquisition we did, which is now we call that the Tanzu application catalog. Essentially giving developers building blocks, pre-constructed, curated, they can take to use to start creating their applications. So that's the build side. Once you have an application built, it's then, okay, how do you run it? So it's a lot of what we're doing with the software-defined data center that I just talked about. Probably one of the biggest evolutions there, though, is our wholehearted embrace of Kubernetes. And so what we're doing, and what we just announced at VMworld last year, with things like Project Pacific, was the integration of Kubernetes into vSphere, into our software-defined data center, essentially enabling customers to use Kubernetes as an API into our SDDC. So this is a really, really powerful thing. And what it's great about it is that we can support both existing applications in that environment as well as modern applications. And finally, then there's the managing side. And so once you've built all these apps, you're running them, how do you manage them? How do you manage them across clouds with these very diverse set of capabilities? And so that's where something like Tanzu Mission Control comes in. The idea there is to provide all sorts of capabilities around identity management, access management, security, policies, network configuration, etc., across your Kubernetes environments, across all these different clouds. So that's really the build, run, manage, 3 key pillars of the Tanzu portfolio.
Now, even from existing applications or applications that you're kind of moving to the cloud, we're hearing a lot of kind of merging services like what we call software-defined data centers as a service, this SDDS as a service. Now, anytime you move something to the cloud, it's sometimes a big undertaking. It's a lot of work, but once you get there, you can take the full advantage of the cloud. Could you maybe take us through what SDD as a service is doing for organizations here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, as most people are aware, VMware has traditionally been a software company in that we develop software, give it to our customers, they install it on their servers, and they operate it themselves. One of the big transitions that we're seeing is this notion of service delivery, i.e., you as a customer aren't running the software yourself, you're simply consuming it. It's basically an API that you can leverage and then take advantage of. And so that's exactly the transition that we're making as well with our software-defined data center. Instead of having customers have to install that software and manage it themselves, they can simply call an API and get access to it. So the first example of this would be what we call VMware Cloud on AWS. That's where our software-defined data center is running on top of the AWS infrastructure. And customers, again, aren't managing it. They're not, upgrading vCenter or these sorts of things. We take care of all that. And so the customer can just call an API to get access to all that great capability. We now have an on-premises version of that called VMware Cloud on Dell. And that one is, again, kind of a prescriptive integrated hardware stack, which we can deliver to the customer via an API call. So it's pretty powerful that you call this API in the cloud, and a little while later, a new rack of servers shows up at your door. Again, but even once that's installed, we manage that and everything from the cloud, allowing the customers to focus more on their applications and less on the infrastructure.
Makes sense. So I think we have a large audience out there. They tend to call out a lot of times that organizations, it's hard to manage different multiple environments all at once, like they're private, they're multi-cloud, they're hybrid cloud, that kind of thing. And like year over year, it tends to get more and more complex. Now, can you maybe take us through maybe what SDDC as a service is actually helping here? How can it help kind of manage that that kind of complexity as it increases?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few parts to it. So, we do talk to pretty much every customer that we talk to has some sort of cloud journey in their sites, right? And everyone's a little bit different, but broadly speaking, they're looking at how do I start taking advantage of cloud? And there's kind of, cloud as a place, and then there's cloud as a model, right? And I'm sure you probably heard those distinctions before. And what customers want is really that cloud as a model, that they want to take advantage of having things delivered as a service, being able to pay, as they go, as they use things, not dealing with the nitty-gritty implementation, but being able to actually consume it and use it for whatever their application needs are. And so when you start looking at multi-cloud, which is a very real phenomenon amongst all the customers we talk to, there's a lot of challenges that start coming into that, because even though they're not managing that infrastructure, they are having to deal with a very diverse set of infrastructure across all those clouds. And so the SCDC as a service comes in, is that we can now deliver them those great consistent SCDC capabilities across any cloud they want. So we have many customers that are running on both AWS and Azure and can have our software-defined data center delivered as a service on both of those. And that just means that wherever they choose to provision their applications, they have a consistent management stack, consistent operational tooling, and that the same teams can actually operate both environments, right? Those teams don't need to be retrained on new tools, don't need to learn new processes, but in fact can have a common set of capabilities that work on both. And so we find that this sort of architecture actually really gives customers a lot of optionality in terms of how they go on that cloud journey that they're looking at.
Well, when we come back, we definitely want to get into this more, because obviously VMware has lots of offerings here and organizations can definitely benefit about learning about them. But before we get to all of that, we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Think's Canary. Now, we all know hackers take the path of least resistance, right? Well, I always say your organization is only as secure as your weakest link. And what is your weakest link? Well, your users, of course. And in fact, get this fact, it takes actually 191 days for a company to actually realize that there's been a data breach. That's a long time. Now, we'll get ready for this, because Think's Canary has a great solution that will make it easy for you to catch breachers in the act. You and I hear about breaches every day, and they're trending upwards. Companies spend millions of dollars on IT security, but still don't know when they're being compromised. Now, take Marriott Hotels. 500 million guests were affected by their breach over a 4-year period. That's a long time to not realize they were being breached. Now, that's where Think's Canary steps in. They have these honeypot appliances that are super awesome. Sprinkle a couple of these things on your network, and when there is a breach, you will be alerted immediately. Now, back in the early 2000s, people talked about using honeypots, but they weren't easy to deploy and easy to get used to and set up. Now, Canary has made that simple with zero administration and managing overhead. Now, canaries can be set up within minutes, and within minutes actually have them configured. Now, your canary will actually look identical to a router and a switch, a NAS server, a Linux box, or a Windows server. Attackers will not be able to tell the difference. Thinkst is actually the company behind Canaries and has been fighting back on security game for over 2 decades, training companies, militaries, governments on how to break into networks, and they've used the experience to build Canary. Now, you might think, well, hackers are going to know. They're going to know these things are honeypots, and they're just going to stay away. Well, don't think that at all, because Thinkst Canaries don't look vulnerable, and they actually look like things on your network. They look like files. They look like machines. They actually can be put in the Active Directory, so they look like the real thing here. Now, these devices are at extreme value to fight against security breaches. Not only are they great value, but they are licensed annually, and if they break down during that year, Thinkst will actually just replace them. Now, since they're actually priced really well, you can start with a few and then just scale them up over time. Now, some of the largest organizations in the world use canaries on their networks. I think it's time you get the value too. Visit canary.tools/twit, and for only $7,500 per year, we'll get 5 canaries, your own hosted console, upgrades, support, and maintenance. And if you use the code TWIT and How Do You Hear About Us box, you will get 10% off the price for life. We know you love Thinkst Canary, but if you're not happy, you can always return your canaries with their 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. That's canary.tools/twit, and enter the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And we thank Thinkst Canary for for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, I want to get back into this because we're talking with a great guest, Kit Colbert, about VMware, its strategies, and a lot of the offerings out there, and some of the services that actually can help you and your organization. But I do want to bring in my co-hosts here as well. I'm going to start with you, Curt. Curt, you want to talk a little bit about how things are going with some of the kind of the bringing two companies together, bringing two services together.
I am. Kit, you mentioned one of your deployment models that I'd really like to ask you about, and that is, looking at my notes, the VMware Cloud on Dell, where, as you described it, a rack shows up at the customer site. It's deployed on their prem, but you manage it for them. Yep. And I'm curious, I mean, is the customer request for this purely an OpEx versus CapEx accounting thing, or are the customers telling you that they have some real operational needs for having that server sit on their floor?
Both, actually. So we do hear a lot of customers asking for that model, the financial model, moving from a CapEx to OpEx one. Even it's really changed over the last few years. A few years ago, people were very CapEx. Some still are, but a lot now are much more interested in OpEx. But more importantly, besides the financial model, is actually, where a customer is investing their resources. I've seen various pie charts that show kind of, okay, for an IT organization, how much time do they spend keeping the lights on versus how much time do they spend actually innovating on new things? And you find that most of the time they spend keeping the lights on rather than actually focus on innovation, right? And when you look at that, a lot of that time spent keeping the lights on is, for stuff that doesn't really differentiate them. And so there's this interesting thing, as important as VMware software is for all of our customers, doing VMware and running our software really, really well by itself doesn't really differentiate most of those customers, right? It's their applications that differentiate them to their own customers. And so there's this notion of a lot of people are saying, hey, if you guys can take care of this for me, that's great. It frees up a bunch of my folks to go focus on things that actually differentiate me as a business. And so we're seeing a lot of companies saying, I want to get out of the data center business. I want to get out of the infrastructure operations business. So someone else, if you could just come and take that over for me, it'd be beautiful. And the fact that we have so many of these customers who are already running VMware's SCDC, we now have VMware Cloud, on Dell, that can take the operational burden out of their hands. And so we are seeing a lot of interest from that perspective.
Well, from those different perspectives, as you talk about the flexibility that you're offering the customers, is this the sort of thing where you're hearing from them that they are taking advantage of the flexibility for different parts of their operation? I'm thinking particularly about something like a DevOps methodology where they might want to have certain types of deployment for development, certain types for the operational part, and especially with the Kubernetes that you're talking about, it seems like it might be very easy to slide this from one kind of deployment to another as it flows through the whole DevOps scheme. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. And we do see that absolutely. And, there's in reality, there's a lot of different consumption options that we give to customers as VMware. You can have software on premises. You can have a service on premises. You can have a service in the cloud. Sometimes, multiple clouds, as we just talked about. And so those different environments have different trade-offs, right? Sometimes for some customers, they're extremely security sensitive, want to really control everything. Maybe don't even want a network connection going outside of their data center. And so for those, obviously, we have to give them software so they can fully control that environment. For others, again, as I talked about, they don't want the burden of managing it themselves. Some people don't want to be in the data center business at all. And so then they just want to go out to the cloud. So what's important is you look across all those different environments, all those different options. Most large customers will have some set of those, all of them, but just in varying proportions, right? Because they have different businesses, different business lines, different priorities for each of them. And so the question becomes, when you have that really diverse, heterogeneous environment, how do you really manage consistently? And especially for a single application, how does that move across those locations, or in some cases exist in multiple of those locations simultaneously? And how do you, again, operationalize that effectively? So that's why, we really think about how do we provide that consistency from an infrastructure perspective, irrespective of where you happen to be located in the cloud, on-prem, at the edge, etc.
Throw it over to Cheeber. Cheeber, you wanted to talk a little bit about the standards, futures with standards.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask the George Jetson question. The world's changing. Lots of futurists, lots of science fiction writers have all predicted that someday the individual computer is going to be not so well defined anymore. In the book that Curt and I both wrote for CRC Press, one of the predictions we had is someday there's going to be enough standards that if someone comes up and says, hey, I need to run, say, payroll, I can actually shop it around to different types of things on the network, cloud services or whatever, and there's enough standards that I can move it around and shop it around and maybe even have a bot do some shopping for me. Is this the kind of future that VMware is kind of leaning towards? Are we going to start seeing some standards in that direction?
Yeah, well, I think we are making a very big bet on Kubernetes as the new infrastructure standard. And, as I mentioned, this is not something we're just kind of idly saying with words, but absolutely we're following it up with actions. I talked about Project Pacific and the fact that our software-defined data center and vSphere specifically will have a Kubernetes API built into it. And so the reason we think that's so important is because Kubernetes is now, depending on how you measure, the second most popular open source project ever. And every major cloud provider is using it. We see a lot of customers using it. We're fully embracing it. So, there is that sort of notion that now we have this infrastructure primitive of Kubernetes, and that so long as folks are conformant to upstream Kubernetes, meaning that there's, you're using the latest version and haven't changed it too heavily, that means that, if you can run a Kubernetes application in one place, you should be able to run it somewhere else as well. And that's a grand vision that, enables that sort of optionality that you talked about, and that sort of marketplace of being able to essentially, find really cheap compute that you can get opportunistically via that marketplace. Now, as much as a vision as that is, and certainly Kubernetes is a great enabler there, you're still going to find other challenges. There's still a lot of operational aspects around security and compliance and performance management, data management, backup. These things fall outside of the sphere of Kubernetes. And so, I'm not sure if in some bold nirvana future we could ever get there where everything, all aspects of operations are standardized. But certainly for the next few years, or even, let's say, a decade out, I would say, we're not going to get to that level of standardization. So I think what we are seeing is more and more levels of standardization, especially around Kubernetes. But there's still a lot that you have to do as an enterprise to really build on top of Kubernetes and make that environment match your standards for running production applications.
So it's very much sounding like we're on our road to an iterative process, and we're going to grow into standards. So why don't I ask one more? I'm a big fan of VDI, and to the point where I actually was the CTO for a company that was building zero clients. But the whole VDI industry kind of had a pause, shall we say. Where do you see VDI fitting into the modern workplace, especially with a lot of security issues coming up?
That's an interesting question. I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't been too close to VDI in the last few years. I was actually previously CTO for our end user computing group, so obviously was very close to it then. I don't know if we've seen a slowdown. So far as I know, we still have very healthy growth in our VDI business. Maybe there's something larger industry-wide that's happening. Look, I think in terms of that, when you start talking about end users and their devices, it again becomes, there is no panacea, there is no one-size-fits-all. If you look at what we're doing from an end user standpoint, we're supporting VDI, we're supporting published applications, which the difference there, if you don't know, is basically a VDI is an entire, like, let's say, Windows desktop. A published application is a single app, let's say, like Internet Explorer or something. We do a lot around mobility management, so managing mobile devices. And so we think, all these things really come together, and that each user, like I myself, I have an iPad, I have a phone, I have a laptop. For some things, I need VDI. For other applications, I can just get them as a SaaS app, via my mobile device. So, again, I don't think we don't look at VDI as the only solution. We look at it as a solution, as part of a broader portfolio around, mobile device management, mobile application management, all those great things, VDI delivery, application delivery, user identity management, security. So there's really like a much bigger solution that I think we're seeing now really defines the market rather than VDI by itself, as it kind of did, let's say, 5 years ago.
Makes sense. Kit, thank you so much for being here. We know we're actually running a little bit low on time. I did want to give you a chance to maybe tell the folks at home where they can go learn more about all the different offerings that VMware has to offer, where they can go get started.
Sure. So, many folks are familiar with VMware, with vSphere, obviously our core compute virtualization platform. But we've done, a tremendous amount of additional stuff. We talked about Tanzu and Project Pacific and all these new things we're doing. So the first thing I always recommend is our website. Obviously, a lot of great info there. But we also have something on our website called Hands-On Labs, HOL. I think it's at hol.vmware.com. And these are really great because these are interactive, very technical sessions where you can go in, get hands-on use of the product, have like a little instruction manual there for how to work through it. And it just kind of gives you a feel for what our products are and what we've got out there. A lot of customers I talk to may have been familiar with us 5 or 10 years ago, haven't heard everything that we're doing more recently. So I'd highly recommend you go check that out just to learn about all the new things we're doing and to see how they might help you in your enterprise and your cloud journey. Yep, there we go. There's the website there.
Well, thanks, Kit. Thanks so much for being here. I do love my hands-on lab, so I'll definitely check that out. Well, folks, you've done it again. You've sat through another hour of the Best Dang Enterprise podcast in the universe, according to 9 out of 10 TWIA pods on Kubernetes. But I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-hosts. Starting with our very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, we're so glad you're back. You're a full steam. Where can the folks find you, your work, what you're going to do in the next week, and maybe how to get in touch with you and give you a show pitch or two?
On Twitter, I'm ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab, or feel free, drop me a line at cheebert@twit.tv. But better yet, why don't you just use twiet@twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your show suggestions. And we're looking forward to having more really interesting people on the show, sharing their knowledge and sharing some of their view in the futures. Polish up those crystal balls.
Thanks, Cheebert. Well, folks, we have to thank our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, people love reading your stuff. Where can they find you, your work, and what you're up to next?
Well, I'm always at darkreading.com, and in particular at the edge of darkreading.com. Go to the Dark Reading homepage. You'll see a little blue box up in the navigation bar. Click on that. You'll find my latest and greatest stuff. Most recently, did something about the RF that people in security need to know about. Some fascinating stuff, and I will give a plug. If you're really interested in learning about all things RF, head over to Ham Nation here on the Twit network, and they'll set you straight. All of the things I write about, I point to on my Twitter feed. That's at KG4GWA. And if you're going to be in San Francisco at RSA conference, hit me up. I'd love to meet you face to face.
Thanks, guys, for being here. Well, folks, we also have to thank you as well. You're that person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show to get your enterprise and IT goodness. we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen to this show. So we want you to go right now to our show page, twit.tv/Twiet. There you'll get all the amazing back episodes, the show notes, the co-host information, the guest information, and the links that we do for the stories during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos, you'll get those helpful download and subscribe links as well. Support the show by getting your audio version, your video version, your HD video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices. In fact, use any one of your podcast apps that you have out there. We're on there. Now, it's the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news, so definitely subscribe. Now, after you subscribe, you should impress your friends, your family, your members, your coworkers, whomever, by sharing Twiet with them as well. Sharing is caring, right? Remember, we have a really great show always on Fridays live here at live.twit.tv at 1:30 p.m. Pacifics. Again, on Fridays. Come see how the show is run. Come see the behind the scenes. Check out all that we do here on Twiet when we record. Plus, if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well. We have a really good bunch of characters in there. They give us some great questions and some good content as we do the show. So if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room as well. And that's at irc.twit.tv. Now, if you want to watch the show, if you can't watch the show live, you can't be in the chat room live, but you still want to be part of the conversation, we have another great place for you to go, and that's at twit.community. It's a really great, amazing place. It's a 24/7 discussion. It's a new community. All the hosts are out there. The Twit community is out there, content, guest information. We talk about different technologies, all different types of stuff, and it's always going. So if you want to be part of that conversation, jump out to twit.community. Come join us there and join the community. Also, don't forget, it's time for the Twit's annual survey, audience survey. We want to hear from you, right? We want to take that. Just take 5 minutes. That's it. We can actually hear directly from you at twit.to/survey20. You can let us know what you think. It's actually no sign up required, and we don't actually track anything. So we want your feedback. We want to hear from you, and we really want to thank you for your continued support. Now, remember, you can always follow me, twitter.com/LouMM. There I post all my enterprise tidbits and, of course, conversations with great people like you. Plus, you can also see what I do normally work week at Microsoft. I post a bunch of stuff about that out there. Plus, you can always check out dev.office.com. There we post all the latest and greatest ways to customize your office experience to be more productive for your organization. I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. Thank you to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support us each and every week. We couldn't do the show without them. Plus, I also want to thank all the engineers at Twit. And of course, thank you to Mr. Brian Chee. He's not only our co-host, but also he's our tireless producer. He gets all the bookings. He does all the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do this show without him. And of course, before we sign out, we have to thank our TD for today, Victor. Victor, it's always great to have you, sir. But of course, we have to continue tradition. What was the main theme of today's show?
Well, first of all, thanks, Curt, for the Ham Nation plug. I work on that show too. I guess what I learned from your blips at the beginning, as bad as your daily life may be, you could be a CISO worrying about Bluetooth vulnerabilities, implementing zero trust, and trying to get vacation.
I would say you're very close, but it's one of those things that you always hear about SaaS offerings, and it's all about Kubernetes today. So I'm going to say Kubernetes is the SaaS offering you should be going to. But I say you're very close. Maybe next time. Thanks, Victor. Thanks for playing.
That was my second.
Yeah, that's right. Well, of course, until next time, I'm Lou MARESCA, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in this enterprise, just keep quiet.